There's 6 key insights that will help clear up the confusion about your addiction, why you haven't been able to quit, why it exists, and what the best method is for you to quit in the future. And I've learnt this over the last 15 years by working with literally thousands of people, helping them with their addiction, mainly from a neuroscience, consciousness-based point of view, a mind transformation point of view. And this view is very, very different to the conventional view. And this is why these 6 insights are unconventional, very different. But they really actually get to the heart of what the problem is. So the first thing is that addiction is misunderstood. The conventional view is that the person with an addiction is the minority, is somebody who's making bad choices in their life and they should just wake up to themselves. But this couldn't be further from the truth, because the truth is that everybody in the world is addicted to something, and I'll explain that. But before I do that, I'll just share a story that I was literally talking to someone yesterday who was basically saying that his brother said to him, "Why do you put your addiction before your kids?" And this gets to the heart of the misconception. You know, the assumption there is that this person is actively choosing their addiction over their kids. And that couldn't be further from the truth. The conscious mind is not choosing the addiction over anything else in your life or over your kids or whatever. It's because the subconscious is forcing your body and mind to take action in a direction that's opposite to what your conscious mind is actually choosing. So your subconscious is not something that's controlled by the conscious mind. The conscious mind is where you make your choices, where you have free choice, isn't it? The subconscious is doing something that's not conscious. So how can you be freely choosing that? So this gets to the heart of the misconception. And because the subconscious is so involved in driving addiction, it's actually something that everybody has in their life. Like whether you're sitting down watching Netflix or some other streaming service for hours a day, or whether you're at the gym and into, you know, exercising a lot, or whether you're into food or whatever you're into repetitively that you really just have to do to feel normal, whether that's something that's detrimental to you or whether that's something that's beneficial to you, it's being driven by pretty much the same subconscious systems in the brain. Because what your brain's trying to do, both consciously and subconsciously, is get rid of pain and get pleasure. And if you think about your actions every day and everything that you do, particularly the repetitive things, it's all about taking away pain. Like, let's just take food. That's about taking away the pain of hunger or the discomfort of fatigue, lack of energy, or lack of clarity of thinking by having food. And it's also about pleasure, because eating is pleasurable. Now, some people categorize addiction according to whether it has a detrimental effect in your life. And I think that's where it really doesn't take into account that it's the same brain structures that are operating, whether it's the repetitive behavior is causing a positive impact or a negative impact. So effectively, everyone's addicted to something. And if you really think about, not just the normal everyday things, but you just think about everyone's own psychological behavior, everyone is psychologically and subconsciously preferencing themselves. So that is because everyone wants to get pleasure for themselves and wants to avoid pain. So we're very self-motivated. So being self-motivated and self-centered is, you could say, an addiction. So addiction is not something that's isolated to, a marginalized group of people in society who are being irresponsible and who are making bad choices and, who should wake up to themselves. So that's a very key insight. And I think if you really take that on board, then you can see that you don't need to beat yourself up because you've got an addiction. Okay? You're not a bad person because you have an addiction. You're not broken because you have an addiction. And somebody might say, well, why is it that I have an addiction to something that it's very detrimental in my life and somebody else has an addiction to exercise, which is positive in their life? Well, the thing is that our experience in our life and our upbringing, what we've come across in our life is stuff that we didn't control coming into contact with that. It was stuff that we just came into contact. It might have been in our family, it might have been in our society. And when we tried it, then our subconscious latched onto that as a way to regulate how we feel. If we feel pain, particularly emotional pain, it then used the addiction to take us out of that pain. Or if we were wanting some excitement, if we felt bored or felt hopeless or felt like a lack of purpose or felt displaced or didn't belong, well, some substances or behaviors give you a lot of pleasure and make you feel like you belong and take away all the inhibitions. So you can see how the subconscious can latch onto that because it's just trying to help. So that is number one, the idea that addiction is misunderstood. And instead of blaming the individual for addiction, we all should recognize that we all have the same brain functions. It's just that some people have had certain behaviors or substances in their environment that have a very powerful effect on our system. And so our subconscious latches onto that. But once we understand that, it gives us a doorway where we can look at addiction very, very differently and we can solve the problem differently. We can stop blaming the person with the addiction, and we can start looking at real solutions. And that's what I hope that you'll come away with from this video with. So number two, the second insight is that the drug or the behavior is not the problem. Now, I know that might sound really radically unconventional, because if someone's life has been ruined by a drug or by gambling or by sex addiction or porn or whatever, how is that behavior or that substance not the problem? Well, the reason why it's not the problem is because your subconscious is trying to use that behavior or substance to solve a deeper problem. You see, your subconscious is trying to use the substance or the behavior as a solution. It's a solution to change your state of being, to take you away from pain, to give you pleasure. And these substances and behaviors do that very, very powerfully. So because the conventional view is that the problem is the substance, I mean, that's what it looks like from the first glance, from the outside. But the deeper problem is emotional. It's our state of being. It's whether we feel okay, whether we feel like we're connected and belong, whether we feel like we have a purpose, whether we feel content or at peace, or like that our future is positive. You see, this is a deeper problem. This is the deeper issue. And you'll find that if someone quits one, let's say, substance or behavioural addiction, and they don't deal with the root problem underneath that, then another addiction will pop up to something else. So how many people quit cigarettes and end up putting on weight because they eat more? Or how many people switch from one substance to another? Or, go from gambling to being a workaholic? I mean, that's the subconscious just trying to solve the problem in different ways once one method has been denied. What we really need to do is stop looking at the surface and look deeper. Unfortunately, the conventional methods only look at the surface, pretty much. There's been a change more recently in viewing addiction as a biopsychosocial problem. In other words, incorporating biology, our environment, our social environment, and our psychology. And then this is a much more holistic and well-rounded approach. And this is what we need to do. But unfortunately, most of the conventional services are still lagging behind in implementing these insights in meaningful, actually successful ways. So unfortunately, there's still this hyper-focus on just stopping the drug. Now, the third insight is really, this is a good point to bring this in, because the third insight is that willpower doesn't fix the problem. Willpower doesn't fix the problem because we need to know what willpower is, what it does, and what it doesn't fix. Well, let me take you back to being a baby, if you can remember. You didn't have cravings for your addiction then, did you? You weren't born with these cravings. And then when let's say that you have a period of abstinence from your addiction, you still have cravings, don't you? This person I was speaking to yesterday was abstinent for a year, and then something happened and they picked up again and started using. And if you look at it from a purely substance or behavioral point of view, like a brain condition point of view, like literally a neurochemical point of view, well, the brain had already rebalanced. It rebalanced chemically in that period of abstinence. So there's no reason for the brain to be producing cravings still. But you see, you know that either through your own experience or seeing others, that cravings continue for years, if not for the rest of your life. I remember meeting an very much older lady. She was maybe in her 80s, and she said that she quit 50 years ago, and she craved every day for her addiction. I mean, that's 50 years of continual suffering. That means that even though she wasn't, taking in the substance, she was still suffering from the addiction, because she was suffering from the cravings and the lack of satisfaction from those cravings. And so she didn't have a complete solution. She had to use willpower. Now, this is why I say willpower doesn't solve the problem, because willpower doesn't put your brain back to the way it was when you were born. You still have cravings after you quit the addiction if you use willpower. So now, what is willpower? Well, willpower is your conscious mind stopping your body from taking action when you get these urges, which are basically, the urges are subconsciously motivated. So they could be thoughts, they could be feelings in your body, they could be a sense of urgency, irritability, anger, fear. All of these symptoms are being generated or triggered by the subconscious. And what willpower does is stop your body from taking action on those urges. But the urges don't go away. And so you continually have to use this willpower block of the conscious mind. And of course, we know that willpower, while you can be very strong in most circumstances, there only needs to be one strong emotional event that can send you right back. I've got a client at the moment that was clean for I think 7 years. And then a strong emotional event occurred and literally went back to a very powerful addiction. And that's because the mind hadn't been transformed back to normal. And the reason is because willpower, which is what they were using, and which is what basically most people use, doesn't transform your mind back to the state where you don't have cravings anymore. So that's why I say willpower doesn't fix the problem. Now, this brings us to the fourth key insight, and that is the failure of the conventional methods. Most of you have probably been through the conventional methods a number of times, and no matter which one you're thinking of, they all are based on, at the heart of it, the root of it is based on using your own willpower, isn't it? So whether you are taking a pharmaceutical to dampen down the withdrawal symptoms for a time, right? Or whether you're going to, let's say, AA, or whether you're having a talking therapy, some form of counselling, or whether you're doing rehab, or whether you're participating in some other form of, group process, whether you're reading a book or whether you're doing it on your own, all of these methods actually, when it really comes down to it, it ends up being you blocking your urges from taking action, from your body from taking action when you get the urge, you alone by yourself doing it. Now, yes, you can go to a meeting. Yes, you can have some pharmaceutical help with the symptoms for a time, but that's not going to last forever. You can't take the medication forever. And when you stop the medication, you still have cravings. So that medication didn't transform your mind back to normal to stop the cravings, and neither did the willpower. And this is why AA and a lot of the medical profession would say that you have a disease for life. Well, in my understanding, it's only looks like that it's a disease for life because people keep relapsing. And the reason why people keep relapsing is because they keep having cravings. And they keep having cravings because they're using willpower. And willpower doesn't transform the mind back to normal. So willpower and the conventional methods are not complete solutions. So this is, this is so unfortunate because you believe the authorities, whether it be, an amazing organisation like AA that's been around for decades, or whether it's the medical profession, or whether it's, some other thing that your friend has tried and it's worked. You believe in them, you try them, you do your best, you do everything that they say, and you end up relapsing when you have a strong emotional event, all because all of these methods were faulty from the beginning, because they didn't ever transform your mind back to normal, and because they were built on willpower. So that is insight number 4, that the conventional methods are not complete methods. Okay. I'm not saying that there's nothing good about them. There's a lot good about a lot of the methods, but they're just not complete methods. They're not complete solutions. Okay. So insight number 5 is where we start to get a different view on a possible solution. And insight number 5 is that quitting is a skill. I've literally helped thousands of people with their addiction, and the vast majority of those have completed the process. because they've gone through and learnt a skill. Now, what is this skill? Well, it's not based on willpower. As we said, we can't rely on willpower because willpower doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't get rid of the cravings. All right. And the other thing about willpower is it causes a conflict between the conscious and subconscious mind. I've done another video on that. You can look at that one in detail. But so when you're developing a different skill, you're not using willpower. There's no conflict. So it's not a struggle to quit. So the skill is basically giving the subconscious what it wants. Remember, we said that the subconscious is driving the addiction by producing the cravings. Well, why is it producing the cravings? It's producing the cravings because it's trying to get a change in your state of being away from pain and suffering and towards pleasure. That's what that's what the root of the problem is, and that's what the subconscious is trying to solve. It's trying to help you get away from pain. That can be physical pain, it could be emotional pain, it could be mental pain, like, that you don't believe that the future is going to work out for you, or you could have a strong, you know, you know, emotional reaction to something. I talked to someone the other day who told me that they had a blow up with their housemate and that sent them into a binge for 3 days and this is because the only way that they could handle that strong emotion was to use alcohol. Their subconscious used alcohol to numb it all. So it's this, it's this state of suffering, pain and suffering, and the need to get rid of that pain somehow and get pleasure that the subconscious is trying to achieve. And it's doing that with the addiction. So if we give the subconscious what it wants in a different way, right, that is better than the addiction, then the subconscious will drop the addiction and it will accept this better state of being. So why do I say that quitting is a skill? Well, the skill is the conscious mind learning how to access a better state of being. Now, you might say, well, if it's that easy, why do I struggle so much when I have such strong emotion? And why doesn't regular psychological approaches that I've already been through in counselling and things like that, why haven't they given me the skill, the answer? Well, mainly that's because those services try to resolve the underlying emotional confusion. Okay, and yes, that's a good thing to do, but it's much quicker, and I think, ultimately that is a good thing to do, and I recommend that. But in terms of your addiction, you don't need to resolve all the underlying emotional confusion in order to quit your addiction. Otherwise, you'd have to become a saint or perfect, or maybe not perfect, but just be a kind of a different emotional person to quit your addiction. That's not the case. What I'm talking about is that you just need to learn how to be with the emotion. Okay? You just need to learn how to be with the emotion. Now, how do you learn how to be with the emotion? Well, that's the skill. Now, when you're having a strong emotional reaction, it's almost like it becomes so big that that's all you're experiencing. That's all that you can see. And it becomes your whole world. Well, part of the skill is learning to experience yourself as actually more than that emotion. And that emotion becomes just one smaller set of phenomena that's occurring that doesn't overwhelm you. And when it doesn't overwhelm you, you can be with it. And in addition to that skill of learning how to be with the emotion, without it overwhelming you, because it's only when it overwhelms you that the subconscious comes in with the addiction. If you can be with it and it doesn't overwhelm you, the subconscious doesn't come in with the addiction, particularly if you can access a deeper state of okayness that's already within you, okay? And you can access that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But basically, there is a step-by-step approach that I teach that enables you to learn how to be with the real problem, get to know that real problem, that deeper state of agitation and discontent without it overwhelming you, and also to access even a deeper state of being where you're inherently okay, when you know that you're okay. In fact, I saw a message from one of my clients today, literally today, saying that they'd been having some ups and downs emotionally, and it was quite challenging, but they recognised, there was some part of them recognised that they were okay, you see? And this is the key. You can learn this. It is a skill. It's not a mystery. It's a step-by-step process. And learning this to access this deeper okayness, we all have it. We all have it. Now, I think in order to explain that, I'll just move on to the key insight number 6, which is that addiction is solved internally. Okay, I'm going to get back to this deeper, because this deeper state that I'm talking about is an internal state. Okay, now, why is this so important, this insight that addiction is solved internally? It's because our society and us and pretty much everyone has kind of learnt to try and change our internal state, our feelings of how we are, whether we feel good or not, by changing something on the outside. You know, how many times when you felt bored have you decided to get up and go and do something exciting, or ring a friend and, you know, so in other words, you changed your environment in order to change your internal feeling, or you go and watch something on TV, or you go and have a drink, or have some food, or plan a holiday, or go and buy some new clothes, or, you know, tidy your house, or have a relationship. You know, all of these are external activities, let's say, or situations that you're engaging in because you want an internal payoff. You want these external situations and activities to change your internal state, you see. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is we're not recognizing that it's the internal state that we're really looking for. And all we're really focusing on is this external change, as if nothing will be okay until the external has changed. Like, oh, everything will be okay when this happens in the future, when this happens in the future. And the problem is that we're effectively, because we're looking at the external, we're not looking at the internal. And if you really recognize that everything that you're trying to do is really leading back to an internal feeling, whatever you're doing is leading back to a feeling of pleasure, a feeling of absence of pain, a feeling of okayness, a feeling of belonging, a feeling of satisfaction, a feeling of, you know, success, a feeling of, you know, being recognized. So it's this internal state that we are really, really looking for. I get people to do an exercise very early on in the addiction program that I teach. And this exercise effectively is about getting you to recognize what it is you really want. Like, obviously you want to get rid of your addiction, but why? And inevitably, people get back to the heart of what they really, really want is they want to feel something in the realms of deep peace, contentment, love. It's in this realm, joy. It's in this area that most people are really looking for. And you realize when you discover that everything you're doing is usually about that. It's about experiencing peace. And particularly if you're over 40, you've learnt that all of these, you know, external activities, partying and chasing after this or that relationship, or having this car or that car, or all of these things, you recognize that in themselves, the satisfaction comes, but it's fleeting. And what you're really looking for is peace and contentment. Now, that is an internal state. Now, I'm not saying that you must, somehow become totally peaceful in your life. You don't need to become totally peaceful, but you do need to learn how to access that dimension within yourself, because it exists. And you slip into it sometimes without even realizing. Like, how many times have you been on holiday and you've been really busy, and even on the holiday you've been really busy, and at some point, a few days into the holiday, you're kind of doing nothing, and this wave of peace just comes over you, and you just realize, hang on a minute, I finally just now feel like I'm on holidays. And it's actually that peace that you're feeling. You're feeling this deep peace and contentment. And what that contentment means is that you're not wanting anything else other than just being okay internally in your own skin. And this is an internal state. It's not about the external environment of the holiday, because if it was about purely the external environment, you would have experienced this internal feeling the moment you arrived. It's just that the external doesn't automatically trigger the internal. The internal you can arrive at the internal spontaneously, this peace and contentment. Now, this is also a skill. You have it within you, and that example I showed you was to prove that you have it within you. You always have it with you. We just don't know how to access it. But sometimes you access it spontaneously like that on the holiday, and other times too. But when you get all caught up with trying to make the external world the way that you imagine it should be, that's when you get all caught up with that, you're not really focusing on the internal, and that's when you get lost from the real solution, which is internal. And it is a skill that you can learn to access this state within you. Now, again, I'm not saying you have to become all chilled out and peaceful saint. You don't. You just need to know how to access this when you need it. All right? You need to know that you focus internally in a certain way rather than externally. Right? You stop blaming others, stop blaming the world and the situation, and you start focusing on what's happening internally, and use your skills, and you already can access that. So many of my clients, once they start learning this skill, they say, things like, I'm not so bothered by, people cutting me off in the traffic anymore. Whereas before they used to be really angry with people who cut them off in the traffic, also, and they find that they're just not as agitated. They're not as bored. It's because your internal, they've got this ability to access this internal state of already okayness. And again, like I said, you don't need to solve all the emotional root of the addiction. You just need to learn how to be with it. So you just need enough skill in order for your subconscious to go, oh, okay, this person's all right now. Like, they don't need me to force the addiction experience to save them from this pain and suffering. So I hope that these 6 insights really help you understand addiction in a I think, a more holistic, deeper way. So I'll just summarize them again, that basically, um, addiction is misunderstood. That's number 1, and basically everyone's addicted. It's just a normal way that our brain operates, particularly subconsciously. And number 2 is that the drug is not the problem. It's a deeper problem to do with, um, your emotional experiences and your skill and ability to handle that emotion without overwhelming you. And that willpower doesn't fix the problem, because willpower doesn't take away the cravings, doesn't transform your mind back to the way it was when you were born. And that the conventional methods are not complete, basically, because they are all based on using willpower. And that quitting is a skill that you can learn. You can literally learn it. It's not a mystery. You can learn it step by step. And also, the number 6 being that addiction is solved internally, not externally. So if you'd like to learn more about how to understand this and maybe even get started on this path, you can look at my masterclass, which you'll find in the description of this video. And alternatively, there are other videos that talk more about some of these points here in this YouTube channel. So every week I'm creating another hopefully very useful video. So don't forget, if you wanted to subscribe to get notified about that. Or I hope to see you in one of my programs so I can help you personally. All right, take care, and bye for now.